that's Claude Bowen, who was one of the two people who actually pushed, and Andy Schuler, or people who pushed for the preservation of our bridge. And that's a photo from Sarah Maynard Clark's Polaroid I found in the Mercer Museum. She had donated her archives. So those are the people who were involved in the preservation of the bridge. Next. So my concluding thoughts, or you should, if you love covered bridges, which we could probably do, or just like them in this room, you should try and get involved in preservation if you have the time. We have events in Percy. I think they have an event every year in New Britain for their bridge. And they're cool to see. Maybe just go out and actually drive around, look at some of the bridges. Support local history. It's important to actually support local history either through donation or participation or just talking about stuff. And donate your time or money. I do a lot of volunteer work. If you're interested in supporting our covered bridge, Percy Historical Society has a donation thing on their webpage where you can send them a check and you have different options for donating. We have to raise $200,000 to fix our bridge. And we're gonna get $100,000 from the state. And to get that $100,000 in grant money, we have to have $100,000 committed locally. And they want grassroots donations, they don't want big donors. And we'll raise the money at some point, and it's a project for us, it's a high priority, but we can't actually get involved with the borough too much because the state wants to see ground roots support for the bridge. But really, to me, this is a poem a guy named Dr. Anderson Scruggs wrote in 1932. He was not a literary doctor, he was a dentist. But poetry was his hobby, and he was published all the time in the New York Times and Harper's. And he did a thing about, covered bridges. It's a really repeated poem. Patrona's seen this before. And his point was, the bridges were really for the country folk. The soulless men he's talking about, this isn't 1932, are the people who were paving the roads. And even at that point, there was a lot of concern about the preservation of the bridges. And that was, almost 90 years ago. So it's a constant struggle to preserve these things, and that's why I kind of got involved with the project. And my appeal to you is if you're interested in preserving bridges, support our bridge. And there's other bridges out there you can definitely support. They're definitely worth saving because it's a piece of the past we'll never get back. And when you think about things in the 1830s especially, they're just priceless in my opinion and the opinion of many people. So does anybody have any questions about Bucks County covered bridges I haven't covered so far? Yes.
Okay, so you're talking to two of the youngest people in the room right here. When you talk about the South Percy Bridge, where was that bridge originally? Because I don't know
By
where
the
it
Perk.
was.
So the Perk's on your left, coming down Branch Road or Main Street.
Uh-huh,
Perk's on your left, Caddy Corner is the mill.
yes.
It was right next to the mill. So it was on North Main Street.
Oh,
That little bridge there?
Okay, yeah,
that's
okay.
what it was.
And the problem they had is, my understanding is the gauge pushed for that because the gauge was concerned about traffic.
Really?
And there was a commissioner who was from Perkins, he was one of the three commissioners, and he kind of pushed for that to get it out of there so the gauge could have better traffic. That's in the newspapers, the Perkins News Herald at that point. But you imagine the traffic jam it would cause there now, it's bad enough the way it is.
Yeah.
If you took the Moods Bridge or, put a bridge there and it's one way,
Mm-hmm.
but that's where it was.
Gotcha.
I drive through the Pine Valley, down in Chalfont,
Yeah, it's a mess.
twice a day, and it's, one stop sign on one side, the other way is right away, and it gets, people stop when they shouldn't.
Mhm.
Last week, one of the planks was up, flopping, so you have to get around it. Yeah,
It's got that nasty lip on it too.
yeah, well, that's,
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
kind of, yeah, it was up the other day, so I just go around, it just,
Do you go through at night or in the evening?
yeah, I mean, they have lights in there.
Yeah, they
now.
have
Yeah.
lights in the, up in the
They did that
rapids.
for
It's
2 years
beautiful.
ago, I think it was for their big
Anniversary,
celebration.
Just for the big
Yeah.
celebration,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, it's beautiful. Actually, we took pictures, I don't know, we have to find those,
I
we
know.
did some good shots of
Yeah.
them.
The one on County Line Road, right outside of Telford,
Yes.
did they save any of the approach? Because what's there now looks almost like it could have been from when there was a covered bridge there.
I'm sure.
You think they could have saved some of that?
Yeah,
The old
it's all
stone.
it's stonework.
Yeah,
Stonework and the coping's the top, is usually stone or cement. I think that was actually wood. If you look at that Oscar Martin thing, they had a wood paneling on top of it. The stonework would be difficult to remove, and it would cost them money to do that. So it's probably the original.
I'd like to address the problem with the trucks going through the bridges.
Mhm.
I called PennDOT and I was to them about that. because it seems like it's the PennDOT bridges that are the ones that are most hit. And they told me that the problem is that truck drivers are not using commercial GPSs.
Right.
And so that is sending, and you know, people today, if the GPS says you go this way, you go that way, you know, they don't use any common sense. And so they just go through and rip out the rafters of the bridges.
I know on newspapers.com, the Percy Historical Society, through a generous donation, was able to get all the newspapers digitized, the Central News and the News Herald. And they were hitting bridges every 2 or 3 years constantly, especially after the 1950s. Especially the ones in upper bucks, they're always being hit by trucks or something. So it's a constant problem.
Do you ever go to Berks County for bridges?
I'd like to.
I live near one at Belvis, right off of 145 in Berks County near Hamburg. And that's still being used, but I understand they're rebuilding it now.
Is that the one they just picked up in the air?
I don't believe so.
Okay, there's one they, what's the name of the bridge again?
Belvis, the name actually.
I think it is, I think it's one they're doing right now.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
family still lives. They preserved the original homestead. I used to live right around the corner from there, and we used it constantly. It was just fun to drive through.
Oh, yeah.
The Bucks County Covered Bridge Society has taken tours to other counties through their covered bridges.
I like Boris personally, I think we have a nice collection.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks for having us here, and, you know, anything else you want to say, Katrina?
No, that's all.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.